So listen, anyway, enough about excitement. Did I tell you about my horses?
What's happened with your horses now? Are they all winning or they losing their legs? What's happened to the horses?
I had 3 winners and 2 seconds out of 5 runners.
3 winners and 2 seconds out of 5 runners. That's pretty good hit rate, isn't it?
Very good. It's a shame that in the past I've had 10 runners, no winners, but they all ran at once. It's quite weird, really, like the buses.
If you were going to give someone wealth advice, would you tell them to invest in horses?
No, no. You invest in, it's an in and out thing in life. You make money to spend on things that you love, and I love horses. I mean, I just love the animal. I mean, I can't ride one. I mean, clearly I wouldn't get on one because the knees would sag, but you know what I mean? But they are
Yeah.
amazing animals. They're like Formula One machines made by nature, and the people around them just love them. It's just I do it because I love the horse. Really, it's bizarre. It's like it's just a passion that you get from a child. Watching things like Champion the Wonder Horse. I mean, obviously that probably missed you by then because you were sort of like still a little egg or something. But hey, I like that. So I think it should be the aspiring landlord because it's not about who I am or who is it. I still aspire as a landlord to push myself. We haven't just reproduced the same thing.
Yeah.
We're always aspiring, and I think in life, aspiring is like if you don't aspire, if you don't adapt and change to the times, you end up a dinosaur. So I think aspiring landlord, because wealth is a slightly different thing. And the other thing I would say is that wealth builds wealth, but I think that is a sort of like the end of the phrase. I think the first part of the phrase, which is the most important thing, is opportunity builds wealth. In other words, wealth does build wealth, but opportunity has to build the wealth in the first place. You have to seek the opportunities, and we're in a cycle. Definitely in a cycle in property. It's always been the case, and I would suggest that 2008 was probably just before 2008 was the height.
Yeah.
And anybody and everybody was a property developer, a landlord. They were, it was, sorry.
Sorry, mate.
It's all right, the dogs are moving around. If you hear dogs bark in the background, it's just the security. 2 Jack Russells that are feral.
Yeah, are you that famous already that you've got security?
No, I mean, the Jack Russells, they don't know any other word but bark. So, and they like to.
They're actually been very well behaved. But
So
yeah,
far.
so sorry, so going back to 2000, when did you start? When did you
2008.
start?
So
When did you start?
I think about 26. So obviously,
Wow.
2005 maybe when we started building. When I started, I'd done another business. I'd been in, I'm originally a pharmacist, as you know. So,
Yeah.
I had a whole waft of experience, and really property I fell into because I had the wealth. I'd taken the opportunity somewhere else to create a bit of wealth that allowed me then to do something with the wealth, but it wasn't the idea. The idea was I was going to be a pharmacist, and I was going to be a retail pharmacist, and I was going to have a chain of shops, and that was my dream. But the world changed, and that's why I say you have to adapt and aspire. You can't ever be the wealthy pharmacist or the wealthy landlord. You are
Yeah.
always one day away from absolute catastrophe. And and pharmacy has gone down a road as I thought it would do, which is very, very tough. And even the people who are the big chains now are disappearing because it's incredibly tough. So yeah, it's not easy.
Someone just George, because we're just rolling, so let's just keep going with this because it's good.
All right, I don't know.
In terms of like the retail, obviously what you did, like for anyone listening, just briefly summarize, the background with the pharmacies and like
Okay.
quick background, just so we can understand like why you got into property and how you just obviously built some opportunity, got some wealth.
Right. Okay. So how far back? I mean, let's start at the
Just
start. I
yeah.
decided to. My father was a pharmacist. I decided to become a pharmacist. I thought that was about the limit of my academic limit.
Which is a lot higher than most people, mate, to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
fair.
I mean, but I had to. I enjoyed A levels so much I did them twice. But anyway,
Yeah.
in order to do pharmacy, and I went to the pharmacy college that asked for the lowest grades. But anyway, I got qualified, and then I went to university, or Polytechnic as it was then, and I got involved in various associations. An association called the British Pharmacy Students Association. I thought it'd be a good way to meet people, so I got elected. I mean, basically, I was the only one who put my name forward. I met some guys, and then roll 4 years later.
Basically,
So Polytechnic,
university,
right?
yeah.
And then move forward. I met some people from university. We're in a pub one day. I didn't have any money. I didn't have enough money to buy a shop, but I was qualifying as a pharmacist. I started training, and I met this guy, somebody I've always looked up to, clearly a very talented individual. And he said to me, "I'm setting up a business, and do you want to join us?" And it's a pharmacy recruitment business, and we're going to be pharmacists, and we're going to go out and we're going to take on the pharmacy locum, which is what you call them, recruitment business, and find locums for all these new burgeoning businesses that are emerging. So I said, yeah, I'm in. And we started in a lounge in a Perry Bar in Birmingham, and yeah, and it's still going. But it was an opportunity. We would travel hours and hours and hours getting to. I'd be based in Sheffield and work in Aberdare, whatever, just to cover it, just so that we would cover anything and everything. We'd do any job, not any job we could do, and it gave us a tremendous advantage. And there were 6 of us, so it gave us quite a spread nationally. And then we just went on, and eventually that morphed into insurance for pharmacists. But that gave me a start, an understanding of business, and then I bought my first retail shop in about 1993, 92, and then slowly built up a group of retail pharmacies, and then realized that there was a time I had to get out, which was very tough in one sense, because it was all I believed I was ever going to do. But anyway, I could see that I couldn't make it work. I couldn't go any further with it. And that's why I talk about aspiration opportunity. I couldn't see any more opportunities in it. Somebody made an offer, a large company that was trying to open up in Britain, in the UK, from Germany, and they bought a load of pharmacies all on the same day, and I sold out, and that was that. And then I was about 42, and I'm thinking, well, now what am I going to do? And that's how.
Let me ask you a question quickly. When you because a lot of people probably stay in a business, or hold assets, investments that they probably shouldn't hold, and they know that the writing's on the wall. What were the signs that the writing was, because like, if you can be more specific, like what was it, financial, or was it like a feeling, or was it just, what was it? Because I think that's the same, because like what we want this podcast to be about is obviously about aspirational landlords, but being an aspirational landlord, or aspirational to build wealth, you need to be able to look into the future a bit, don't you, to be able to read the signs that are happening. And we know, I think we both believe, that there's a massive fundamental shift happening in rental property and for landlords, and the way the market's going. And like, that's obviously good for people to be able to start to spot the signs, but there's spotting the signs, and then there's also making decisions in there. Like you said, it's such a hard decision, because your business was not it. Everyone, particularly a lot of people, tie their businesses to their own status. It's who they are, isn't it? If you're a business owner, of people's jobs, it's kind of a massive part of their status, who they are, like their self-worth, isn't it? So it's a massive change, isn't it, to be able to, a massive decision to be able to say, I'm going to sell a business, because it's like the business is you and who you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no,
So
absolutely.
how do you make that decision, or are you more cold with those decisions?
Well, it was difficult because my father had been a pharmacist, and I was a pharmacist, and I believed I was always going to be a pharmacist, and I was very passionate about pharmacy. I mean, I love pharmacy. I mean, the guys that I got involved with are all very political animals, wanted to, people with a cause to make pharmacy a better place. But the problem we had is that the difficulty is to identify when it's a trough and when it's a cliff. So you're on a slightly downward trajectory, and the question is, will it bounce back or will it not? And
Yeah.
in pharmacy, we were under immense pressure by the supermarkets to relinquish our contracts, or to share. A supermarket could open up in a brand new site nearby an existing population, but that pharmacy kept the contract. Okay. The supermarkets they couldn't have a contract. They weren't allowed a contract. But what changed me was that Tony Blair was in government, and Sherry Blair was a QC. whatever, yeah, QC at the time. And she represented, I think it was Tesco's or Asda or some supermarket, for a development at Cribs Causeway, which is in Bristol, for a pharmacy to be opened, for them to get a contract. Anyway, I think they failed. But what it said to me was, Tony Blair being close to Mr. Blair, Tony Blair, just suggested it was just a direction or a narrative. It wasn't her fault. I mean, it was just a narrative. It makes sense, because at the time it made sense to everybody to have a big supermarket. It made sense to everybody to have a big supermarket somewhere on the corner of every place. And why not have a pharmacy in it? The reality is, which I learnt about retail very early on, you can't have your retail cake and eat it. You can have a pharmacy, you can have a supermarket with a pharmacy and a baker and a butcher and a candlestick maker, so to speak, inside it, but you can't have a baker and a butcher and a candlestick maker and a pharmacy and a post office and a newsagent just round the corner from you. You can't have both.
Yeah.
And so you could only see it. You could see it. I worked in a pharmacy in Spondon in Derby, and they had a plaque on the wall and it said Asda, £1 million, a member of the £1 Million Club. And I went, what's that about? And they said, we took £1 million in a week. And I thought about that. And when I had my business, I thought I could keep my still open for 10 years. I would have only got £1 million. Maybe 10 years to just, if I never cashed up, I'd have had £1 million. They did it. And so who am I trying to, it's not like David and Goliath. It's the ant against the human. I mean, they just crush you.
Yeah.
The government protected us. But the moment that fell, so it started to be loosened. So supermarkets started to be allowed to be open on a Sunday. They weren't allowed to open on a Sunday. You say you had Sunday trading, and then suddenly someone says, oh, well, if a pharmacy is open for 100 hours, we'll give them a contract. And that was like, and so you can see where they want to go. Well, let me tell you, they've got we've got our retail cake and we've eaten it, and we've lost all of the high streets. We're losing our high streets.
Some interesting parallels, George, what you just said. It's actually like, the big supermarket, if you think about now the way the way property is going, the big building instead of all the little buildings, it's kind of, there's some interesting parallels, isn't there? Like and also you talked about the legislation as well.
It was a hobby horse at the time, and it still is, but it's, it's one of those things. The reality is that Mr. and Mrs. Smith with a 4x4 or a steak can go to Tesco's or to Asda, big supermarket, and do their shopping weekly. And now they get it delivered anyway, and everyone gets it delivered. And they don't use the corner shop, and the corner shop goes, well, that's great, until they get to about 75 and they're on their own because their husband's died or the wife's died. And they just want some coffee and a newspaper, and they want to meet people. And they can't drive anymore. But the local shops that they never used while they were living in their house are all gone. Whereas when I was there was communality. So Mrs. Smith, who was a widow, would come in and she would talk for 10 minutes about a day, a life, or whatever. So now we have loneliness, and we have people that are easily forgotten. And you pay a price when you change what you want in life. And it's quite ironic that Mr. Trump is trying to set back time to be, the little, everyone has a factory and everyone's screwing things into the back of boards, which I think is a bit of a pipe dream. But communality is something that I think no one has questioned, and no one said, but what about humanity? What about a community? Because if you have a high street, there's a community. The kids go down there, they meet, the people know them, people ask them how they, people ask each other how they're doing, people know where they live, they and then they say, let's have a street party, and people have street parties because they're always interacting. Now we all go into Tesco's and we don't care. In fact, now what we do, we go to Amazon's, we don't even speak to anybody. I mean, it's and so what will happen is when we're in our 80s, 90s, well, I'm not that far away, I'll be sat in a flat. This is a bit of a sad state. There'll be people who just sit in their flat or their homes, and they're just got an internet, and they order what they need to eat and what they need to do, and they never leave home. I think that's tragic.
It's interesting. It's actually, yeah. You can see now though that there's a lot of I don't know. It's an example. You just made me think of this. So like community now is so important for when new businesses are starting up. A lot of it's around like community, and people love obviously the meeting up still. I'm just thinking there's all these coffee shops that are popping up that play music, like they've got like DJs in there, and people go there to drink coffee and to dance and have fun together. So it's just, people still want that community, don't they? They just need an outlet for where to get it from. Like that's maybe a young person's, a different example, but the theme of People, no matter how much technology you introduce and how much efficiency and basically one click make it easy for people to do everything, people still want to walk out and say hello to some. Most people still want to go outside, see someone, have a chat, and feel better about themselves, don't they?
Yeah, and every area should have a should have a communality center. They should have an area point of community where that whether that's a Costa coffee or a news agent, or somewhere news agent or anything, post office,
Mm,
whatever it is,
mm,
you know, the pub or whatever. But it has to be something where people can. And what we have to be aware of is that the retail supermarkets rose because you vote with your money. So if I'm a family and I'm spending £100 a week on food, right? I get
yeah,
100 votes. If I'm a little old lady or little old man and I'm spending £5 a week, I only get 5 votes.
yeah,
So the people you need to protect, the people you don't need to protect, because if I've got a car and I could afford to pay £100 a week, well, I could afford to pay a little bit more in a little corner shop. So the people who are charged more in the corner shop, because ultimately the prices are slightly higher, the people who are who find it the hardest to access the out of town shopping centres because they don't drive anymore and they haven't got a bus service that works. They're the ones that really suffer. And and if you're a multi-millionaire with a big 4x4, well, nowadays you just order it online anyway. But in those days, they just got in
mm,
their car and went and filled it up, and and if they spent £100, that's what the supermarkets wants. Supermarket wasn't interested in somebody who's paying £3, buying £3.50 a week for groceries. So that was my that was what I could see, and that was never
yeah,
going to change. No matter what I thought all that has to happen is the government turns around one day and says, you know what, we'll let everybody have a contract, or that they create a situation whereby it becomes unfeasible for pharmacies to continue as they are. Because the reality is, when you're competing in a business, and this is important in any business, is you've got to look at who you're up against. So your competitors. So what you do is you say, well, if I'm a supermarket and I'm a corner shop, the supermarket has got all the power of buying. So in pharmacy, there was a rise at the time of multinational, what they call multiples. So Lloyd's Chemist, Boots Chemist, I think Unichem. I can't remember what they're called now. Mosses, I think. But they were all on the rise, and you had these 200 shop plus shops growing as they bought out all the independents, and the
yeah,
independent size of the independents became smaller and smaller, and therefore, as it became smaller, the government no longer needed to protect the small people because they had the big guys, and
mm,
then once they got as the small guys went, then they could push down on prices. The government was a monopoly customer, so it
mm, yeah,
big pharmacies because they keep pushing down,
mm,
and we get
mm.
where we are. So that's where you have to look.
So George, so basic, instead of getting into maybe too much detail, so did you fall into property? Did you say, was it an because we're going to talk about this in a minute, but basically opportunity builds wealth. That's what we want to talk. We want to one of the first kind of major topics we want to talk about. Opportunity builds wealth. So property sold out the pharmacies, got some capital to invest. Was it an opportunity? So did you just see an opportunity? What was it about property?
They want to do property.
You didn't want to do it.
I hated the way, I mean, I think you have a contract with life of who you are. And I happen to be somebody who'd gone out and as a pharmacist, you just tell people you make money doing it maybe because you have a pharmacy. But when someone comes in and they say to you, I've got a headache, you sell them paracetamol. You don't sell them the most expensive product that you could think of because
Yeah.
you're not like that. You just give them what you think they need because it's like, there's a kind of like, a doctor just treats you. So
Yeah.
so property, I always felt, I thought property developers and landlords were, not something I particularly wanted to aspire to become. I thought I don't think it has a good rap, doesn't property? I think there's far too many people riding around in their, in the stereotype of a fast car and doing nothing, and that's
Mm,
not fair, really. It's in fact it's incredibly unfair. You know, You know, I can remember when I first started doing property, and I was at my golf course, and they said to me, "Would you spot for a one?" And the person gets a free car if he gets a hole in one. I said, fine. I said, and then I put down that, and he said, what's your profession? I went, well, my new profession is I'm a property developer. And they came back and they went, yeah, we spoke to the insurers. They said they don't want you to do it because of your profession, which just underlines exactly how
Mm.
property developers and then then don't get me wrong, that was in the time just before 2008 where everybody was making money. Now this is my point. The real reason I didn't do it is because everybody was making money at property. Anybody and everybody. There were loads of programs of, I bought this, these was
Yeah.
25,000. I've just made 35,000, and I did this and I did that, and look how much money I'm making. And there were lots of people who are, who were on the property market, and lots of programs. And there were a lot of people thought it was easy money. And so I worry about a market that's like that. It's like where stocks and shares are going through the roof, and people are just buying it like the dot-com boom. Everybody just bought it, and you go, why are you buying that share? They go, I don't know, but it went up 10% yesterday, and it went up 5% the day before, so why not? And there's a very famous story about just before the Wall Street crash, which I think it was Jack Kennedy, and he got in a taxi, and the taxi driver told him to buy shares, and he got out of the taxi and he'd sold all the shares, and then about a week later or so, the story goes, the market crashed, and he said, when the taxi driver tells you, right, that you should buy shares, get out. And then roll forward 10, 25 years, a lovely man called David Robertson, who was my solicitor, who helped me sell my pharmacy business, he
Mm.
said to me, I said, I'm thinking I might get into property, but I don't really want to. And he said, well, my advice is this, is that a lot of my solicitor friends are getting into property. And let me tell you, that means it's about to crash, because the last time they all got in, that's what happened.
So this was, what was this? 2007? 2000?
He
Oh
said,
my
look, a lot
God.
of my friends
Timing.
are buying properties, and he says, and my view is that when they're doing that, then you're in trouble. And I kind of took it, but it's like a market. It's very hard to sit at a market that clearly is very strong and
Mm.
stand on the sidelines saying, woe is me, Armageddon is coming. Because it doesn't feel like that. It's like a share that's going up through the roof. So there's a share, some people might know, it's called Palantir. It was
Yeah.
$30 a share in August last year. It's now 120. So it's nearly $100 more.
Yeah.
And all the way along, there are loads of people who absolutely think it's the best thing since sliced bread. But there's lots of people who go, it's too rich. It's like got it doesn't, financially it seems to really stretch the envelope as to value relative to its earnings, but it still goes up. And it's that.
It's a Palantir's just describe to people what it is. It's a weapon. It's basically they're like a tech company, aren't they, that deal with arms, AI.
It's an AI database mining company. It's very useful. Gets lots of contracts with the
With the
American US
government.
defense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the point is, nobody really, I mean, I don't understand it, but they buy it. They buy it at 30, it goes to 35. They buy it, it goes to 35, it goes to 40. Do you sell? Okay, I'll sell. It goes to 50. You go, crikey, I wish I hadn't sold. Oh, I'll buy some more. It goes to 60. You talk to your mate and he goes, I got out at 35. You go, well, I got back in. He gets back in, and so it goes on. But at some point, yeah, you think the bubble's going to burst. It can't go on forever. It can't keep on going, surely. And that's what happened in the dot-com boom, And
Mm.
so you felt in property in 2006 and 7 that the whatever was going to hit the fan. So move forward, right? I saw property as like that. I saw lots of people that I didn't think were particularly talented for whatever
Mm.
reason were
Mm.
buying property and making money.
Yeah.
And I thought that the narrative made them look a target to government and to anybody who would say, they don't do anything. They bought it for 20, sold it for 30, but they haven't done anything. It's a bit like somebody who buys Palantir at $30 and sells it for $40. They haven't done anything. They've just
Mm.
taken a risk, and people don't like people who actually they don't actually physically or something, they have talent. It's not their talent. They just happen to have followed a trend. So that's why I didn't really want to do property. But see, I couldn't see another opportunity. I went from retail I had the insurance company, but I was on the periphery of that. I went into manufacturing, pharmaceutical manufacturing, which I thought was fun. But I got to the same stage, just albeit a bit quicker, and realized that that wasn't going to fly.
Yeah.
I managed to sell the business, didn't make a profit on the business, but I didn't lose my investment, which is which was in Key. You know, I didn't put a lot into it, but I got my money back, which is all I wanted really, because
Yeah.
I could see it wasn't going to fly. And so somebody rang me up and said, a friend of mine, he has a glass company, and he said to me, I've got this piece of land which I bought, but I only want half of it, and I'm going to build some warehouse sheds. Do you want to go in with me as a joint venture, as an investment, because you could get some return on sheds? And I thought, that's not property really, is it? I mean, that's commercial, it's different.
Mm.
Built it and we sold it. We made some money at it. But when I did that, then somebody coming to me and said, I've got a house and I'm knocking it down. I'm building 8 flats, which is my current business partner, Julian. And then, of course, I went, oh, okay. And then I actually got really passionate about it because, and I've discussed it with you before, I realized how close to retail property can be, really close to retail. So by that, I mean, when you worked in a sort of these big pharmacies, a big supermarket as a pharmacist, what I learned was they have a thing, in retail, they have a thing called KVIs, which is basically known value items. And the supermarkets in those days, don't know if they still do, they realized that there are 1,000 products that they stock, but only 50 of those are priced sensitive. That is to say that the woman who's buying the shop, doing the shopping, the mother who's doing the shopping, generally in the case, men do as well, but in that case, say the nappies and the milk for the baby, they're really sensitive, particularly nappies, to the price. And if you were the cheapest person for nappies, they wouldn't worry about the cost of shaving foam, say, for their husband, because they don't know the price. They just
Yeah.
know the supermarket. And if the supermarket's selling the nappies,
Yeah, that's so interesting. I've never heard that. I can't remember you ever telling me that story before, but that's actually so true. It's making me think about look at the price of some, and then you assume it's like that home bargains or something. The place is supposed to be cheap. Someone was telling me to go there to get something, whatever, and you think, oh my God, that doesn't feel that cheap. But some of the things are cheap. But then you're like, it must be cheap because I'm in the